Okay, so last night, Clay and I watched Mr. Peabody and Sherman, and okay. I'm gonna go ahead and make an apology before I talk about this movie, because there is a non-zero chance that at some point, instead of saying Mr. Peabody and Sherman, I will end up saying Peabody and Mr. Sherman, because I'm not going to say that title sounds better to me, but I know I've called the movie that in the past, and when Clay and I were talking about it, I know I ended up referring to the characters as such once or twice, so it's probably going to end up happening. So, let me just go ahead and get that out of the way. It might be. So, talking about the actual movie, I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I pretty much hated it from the word go. And this is my first F tier DreamWorks movie. It's not a bottom of the fucking barrel. It's not a movie that I watch and think, this is so bad. This is so ludicrously awful and terrible that there is no conceivable way they can make something worse. Because that is what a bottom of the fucking barrel ranking is. It is not just bad. It is not just at the bottom of the ranking. It is so terrible it can't be topped. This to me is not that kind of bad. But as I've said in some of my other DreamWorks videos, I've talked about the difference between not funny and unfunny. Where there's times I'm like, yeah, this, I didn't think it was funny, but it wasn't actively taking the joy out of me. It was just a joke didn't quite work. I think I talked about that a lot in Madagascar 2. And I was like, Julian is unfunny in these movies. But most of the other things, if they don't work, they just don't work. And then again, I have to point out he is funny in Madagascar 3. I almost hate that he is, because I have to now put that disclaimer when I talk about him in 1 and 2, but hey, they finally made him funny. I have to say it. This movie to me wasn't a lot of the humor is pun humor. And pun humor is the kind of humor that either works for you and you think it's great, or it doesn't. I'm the kind of person where I guess it just depends on my mood and on my vibe, where sometimes I like pun humor, sometimes I don't. And I think I had said for at least with Turbo or so, I was kind of in a bad mood when I watched it, but whatever. I was in a great mood when we watched this movie. I had a really nice shift at work. It was very pleasant. I had some really nice slices of pizza, this kind of Parmesan crusty base. This was delicious. I just did a map and Fire Emblem that had been giving me some trouble, but I was going through it. We got it done. No one died. I felt great. And then I watched this movie, and it was there were some puns, and they weren't awful, but I wasn't super laughing. And then Mr. Peabody would make a punch and we go, ha ha ha. I don't get it. And I think that's what kind of was starting to get me. I was yeah, it's a pun, it's fine. And I don't get it. That was a really simple, easy pun. What did you not fucking get? Oh. And then again, his Peabody's, that's something I did it on purpose. I just didn't call him Mr. But Mr. Peabody's puns just never really got better. I just didn't find them funny or that endearing. Just oh. I know there were a few oh, that's disarming. Where Clay and I just both kind of died a little bit around that point. We're still in the first act of the movie, aren't we? We're just getting into act 2. It was the first time where I genuinely thought to myself, can we just take a break and finish the movie later? Can we just stop and not finish the movie? I didn't actually say it to Clay, but it popped into my head a few times. I just don't want to watch this anymore. Now, again, part of that is, I didn't find it funny. Again, I found it unfunny. That's problem number 1. That's strike 1. Strike 2 is the movie it's really mean and unpleasant. And not in a funny way. I look at Chicken Little, which is not a DreamWorks movie, it's a Disney movie that feels like a DreamWorks movie, where the first third is so aggressively mean-spirited. And I find it hysterical. It's so over the top it becomes funny. Where it's sure, I don't think I really have the body type to play dodgeball, says the really big pig. Everyone hit the pig, popular versus unpopular. That's how we're dividing the teams. Gosh, that's awful. That's amazing. This is just, hey, so, Sherman's a pretty smart kid. I don't know how old he is. I want to say 7 years old. I don't know if I'm making that up or if they said it, but it's his first day of school, so maybe he's in first grade, but he looks a little older than first grade. Maybe not super old. Yeah, I don't super know. Anyways, but, he's smart, especially for his age, because he's got Mr. Peabody as a teacher, taking him with his Wayback Machine to a different time travel and shit. And he ends up just getting bullied by this one girl in his class who is like, oh, what kind of tree did George Washington chop down? Oh, it's a cherry tree. And he's like, well, actually. And that's not how he talks. Like, he's not being... he and Mr. Peabody both aren't, like, condescending know-it-alls. They're not like that one kid from Polar Express. I feel like that's important. They're not assholes when they're showing people up. They just kind of do. And he's like, well, no, actually, it's apocryphal. Like, oh, what kind of tree is that? Oh, no, it's not a tree. It just basically means it's some bullshit that people made up. He didn't actually chop down a tree, blah, blah, blah. And then the girl gets really, like, embarrassed and mad because she got shown up. And you do see her in the background in the first scene, when Mr. Peabody drops him off. She's like, is he being dropped off by a dog? What the fuck? And she's like, you're eating real food, not kibbles and bits on me. I saw it. Your dad was a dog, so I figured you would eat dog food. You're a dog. I'm not a dog. What the fuck are you talking about? And then she, it was either she smacked his food out of his hand or specifically grabbed it and threw it. But she assaulted him, like, that's a battery. And then third's like, you're a dog. Go fetch. And it's like, this just feels unpleasant. Like, this doesn't feel funny. This is just mean. And, she end up doing that. She ends up, like, grabbing him from behind. I think she had let him, like, a headlock or something. I don't know exactly what it was. But, like, yeah, she's actively bullying this kid. And you end up cutting away and you find out, oh yeah, he bit her. Which, of course, makes me think of Lilo. I think she bit me. It's like, you better hope it's not infected. But, yeah, like, she started the fight 100%. She was bullying him. She physically assaulted him a couple times. And he ends up getting in trouble for fighting back and defending himself. And then Mr. Peabody gets called in. And then I don't know what she is. I don't know if she's like a school counselor. She's a social worker. I think a social worker. It's like, well, I don't think a dog should be able to adopt a human boy. Anyways, I went for 2 different voices at once. We'll go with this. I'm like, I don't think you should be able to do that, You might fool other people with your fancy little tie, which is more something she does later in the movie. And the fact you're all your big words, but you're still just a dog. I'm going to come to your house and inspect. I can't wait to take your son away from you, you little shit. And it's, again, like, she's not funny. Like, to me, it wasn't like, oh, they made her so hilariously over the top. Like, they gave her a really funny voice. Like, her design isn't even really that funny. Like, it's not like she has a really funny voice or she says a lot of really funny lines or she's just so, like, she's just mean and awful for no reason. And one thing it seems like this movie, whether it's intentional or not, is almost kind of a metaphor for a gay parent adopting a child. Which apparently is something that a lot of people see in it. And that's kind of what a lot of the discrimination is about. It's almost like this kid he's not being bullied because his dad is a dog. You can see it as like, he's being bullied because his dad is gay. And people are like, well, you have a gay dad, you must be gay. And how it kind of affects him. And how when his dad hears about like how vehemently the kid's like, I'm not a dog, like it kind of hurts him a bit. It's like, does he see me as lesser as a result? And all the discrimination that the other kid's family shows him, and that this like social worker shows him, like, people like you can't raise a child. I can see that. It doesn't necessarily make me like the movie more, and not because it like conflicts with my views or anything. Like, no, like I think if you're a good parent, you should be able to adopt a kid. If you're a bad parent, you shouldn't have kids. I don't care if you're white, black, gay, straight, trans, whatever the fuck. A good parent is a good parent. A bad parent is a bad parent. That's what I get from reading Frankenstein. I don't get the whole man should not play Prometheus, man should not play God, and all that kind of shit. I get Victor Frankenstein is a terrible parent, and when you're a terrible parent, shit fucking happens. But seeing the kind of metaphor the movie has, whether it's intentionally going for it or not, almost because it's something I agree with, that, like, yeah, if he's a good parent, he should be able to be a parent. People shouldn't be assholes for no reason. Does not make me go, yeah, this movie's really good. It makes me go, no, the people in this movies are movies, like it's plural. The people in this movie are just assholes for no reason, and it's not that funny. I mean, I guess with Penny, it's like, yeah, she got shown up in class, and then her parents, like, yeah, I mean, your kid bit my kid. Like, I get that, but, like, this person is just so awful and not fun and not funny. It is unpleasant. And when the plot actually happens, like when shit starts going, like, all right, we got to time travel and shit, it is because Penny's a piece of shit, and the only way Sherman can get her to not be a piece of shit is to show her the Wayback Machine, so they end up stealing the machine, so he's like, all right, this is how it works, like, stop bullying me so we can get past this. They end up getting stuck in ancient Egypt. He goes back to get his dad, like, Dad, we kind of took the machine, and now she's in Egypt, so then they go to Egypt to save her from King Tut, because they're gonna get married, and she's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get everything when he dies young, which, okay, that was awful, but it was actually kind of funny. It was like one of the only lines, like that, and like the Bill Clinton line at the very end, where like, I give him a pardon, I give him a pardon, I've done worse. Like, that made me laugh. Like, that was like, alright, movie, that was actually a funny joke. It doesn't make up for all your actively unfunny ones, but at least you weren't complete ass. Fuck, I really didn't like this movie. But, like, that part's kind of funny, but then she realizes, oh, when he dies as his bride, I will get killed and mummified too. Please save me. So then you get a whole thing of them trying to save her, and then they end up going to the Renaissance because they're running out of fuel, so they gotta go hang out with Da Vinci. And they end up with his, like, flying machine prototype, and Penny's like, hey, so, Sherman, how do you use this thing? Well, I mean, you probably do this, this, and this. Oh, so then what? Well, you probably do this, this, and this. Oh, okay, so I'm doing it now, and I'm stealing it. So, like, let's go for a joyride. And then as she's stealing, he's like, well, shit, I can't let her do it by himself. So he goes with her, and they end up stealing Da Vinci's flying machine and flying and having a good time. And then Mr. Peabody's like, Sherman, you can't fly things. As he's flying, he goes, oh, shit, and then they crash. There's a scene where they're trying to build something, and Sherman's helping, but he's actively non-helping. And then Mr. Peabody's like, Sherman, can you stop that and just give it back to Da Vinci? He goes, okay, Dad, and then hits it again, and then gives the thing. I'm like, okay, that was just you being a punk. And that just doesn't seem to be your character. What the fuck was that? Oh yeah, there's this one really weird scene where, like, right when they escape Egypt, the royal vizier, like, throws down his sword, and then a dude runs by, grabs it, yells something, and runs off. And we rewatched it. I had no idea what the hell he said. Maybe that's one of those, like, history buff things where it's like, okay, like, there is an actual, like, thing that happened in Egypt. Like, if you threw down a sword, someone would grab it and, like, yell. Like, I don't know. It could be a thing that's actually, like, a really clever reference that I don't get. But I was like, what the fuck was that? What did he say? Then we rewatched it. I was like, yeah, what the fuck was that? I don't get it. That one was like, yeah, that was me being sure. I'm like, okay, I don't get it. What happens after that? I think then they end up in ancient Greece. Yeah, then they end up in ancient Greece during the Trojan War, where, yeah, Peabody and Sherman end up getting into a fight where, like, blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, you're just a very bad boy, Sherman. And I was like, okay, now we're getting to the part where they're just mad at each other, which is, yeah, Sherman's been kind of fucking up a lot. Like, he's a bit of a fuck up, but he's also, again, like, maybe 7 or so I don't, like, hate him for it, but he's not exactly helpful. Penny is actively unhelpful. She reminds me a lot of Steiner in the first, like, third of Final Fantasy IX, or, like, this is a character who's not just useless when it comes to the plot. They're actively trying to hinder everyone, or, like, their actions actively hinder. The difference is, Steiner, you kind of get what he's going through and why he's doing and thinking the things that he does and thinks. And as the game goes on, he gets more interesting. And then, there's that part of the game where you're like, hey, this guy's really interesting. Now we're just going to not see him for a while. And then he comes back severely underleveled as a result. Because Final Fantasy IX has problems. I like the game, but anyways, before I go on a full 9 tangent, she is actively unhelpful, and most of the shit that goes wrong is because of her. But she doesn't really get better. Like, they're escaping the Trojan horse, and then her toga ends up getting just caught enough, and she's like, help! And then they help her, and then Mr. Peabody ends up being in the horse that falls down, and like, oh no, he's dead. So they're like, oh shit, well, we gotta use the machine to go back to the present where 2 of us exist and get my dad. Because the only person I could probably save my dad is my dad. But if you go somewhere where you are, you can cause like temporal paradoxes and shit, because Back to the Future. And they do that, and he's like, there's no way I could have died, Sherman. Like, are you serious? And then past Sherman ends up showing up, and then they get like all temporally and shit. And then Mr. Peabody shows up, and he's like, yeah, of course I didn't die. You know, there's no way I could do that. Oh, that's what I was saying. And then a lot of temporal bullshit happens, and I did not care. I just wanted the movie to be over, and then eventually the movie was over. So Strike 2 was just... Okay, Strike 1 is that it was actively unfunny. Strike 2 was just how unpleasant and mean it is with characters like Penny and the Grundle, or whatever the fuck they called her. Mrs. Grundle, I don't know. To me, Strike 3 was that I just didn't care. Like, we're doing all this fun time travel shit and shenanigans, and yeah, like, seeing Leonardo da Vinci is pretty fun, and like, Trojan War Patrick Warburton is also really fun. Now, he's also Agamemnon. I'm like, I don't remember Agamemnon being a fighter. I might just be completely misremembering that. I was like, yeah, I remember he was a king. But from what I remember, he just kind of like sat from behind and did a lot of political shit, and you know, like planned a lot of the battles. I remember he and Achilles had a lot of problems. Maybe he was on the front lines. Maybe he was in the horse, and I am genuinely misremembering. It wouldn't surprise me. It's been a while since I've read the Iliad. But I was like, okay, that's a little weird. Like, that feels like a more... Especially how they made him, like, super frat boyish. It's like, that feels more like how you'd write Achilles than how you'd write Agamemnon. Like, that feels kind of weird. But, okay, it's fine, I guess. I didn't really like Mr. Peabody. Now, he is not an active, unlikable character. Like, I will give it that. Again, like, the difference between not funny and unfunny. Not funny is, like, it just didn't work for me. Unfunny is I actively hated it. Unlikable is I actively hate you. Didn't like is just, you didn't work for me. Because I don't like that trope of the character who is perfect. It's like, yeah, I'm super smart. I'm super athletic. It's like whenever you watch an anime and then they're like, oh yeah, this is that one girl in our class and she's the one who's really smart, always gets the good grades, is super popular, she's super attractive, and she's like really good at athletics, she's in like all the clubs, or all the clubs want her, and gosh darn it, she's so perfect and I'm just not. It's like, I roll my eyes every time I hear that in an anime or read it in a manga. Kind of like whenever I watch JoJo and you have a character that just goes, my stand is perfect and has no weaknesses. I fucking roll my eyes every time. I hate it. But anyways, it's like, that's not a trope I like. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm super smart even though I'm a dog, and like, I invented this and this and this and this and this. I'm like, okay. You're just a bit much. And the way they get out of the French Revolution, which is actually a scene that's, like, the whole French Revolution is kind of fun, but you're also like, you brought your kid to the French Revolution? Like, I know I'm supposed to be on your side about how, like, you're this great father and everything, and yeah, you got them out of it. You, like, if you bring your kid to the Renaissance, that sounds cool. Like, you're really teaching him something. And it's like, yeah, you know, all these great thinkers and shit. And I mean, I don't think it was a particularly dangerous period. It could have been. I mean, I'm pretty sure there were probably some parts of Rome you didn't want to walk through the streets alone at or whatever, but you're probably fine. You know, you bring him to this place, but like, you brought him to the French Revolution. What's wrong with you? I almost said what's wrong with you, dog, with a D-A-W-G, but in context, it makes it sound like it's a slur, so I'm not going to say that, but what's wrong with you, Mr. Peabody? And yeah, they end up getting captured and separated, and then he almost gets, Mr. Peabody almost gets executed. He's like, well, you know, Sherman, in the blink of an eye, I went, blah, 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 I figured all the shit I had to do, and it was really easy. It was just a matter of keeping my head. I don't get it. But it was kind of that moment where, on the one hand, I'm like, okay, it's kind of fun the way he's able to do that kind of shit, but also, oh, so nothing in this movie is actually going to be a threat to you. Like, you can just get out of anything. And then he's like, oh yeah, I was trapped in ancient Greece, but I found the most rudimentary shit possible and just made another time machine. Sure. All right. I don't believe it for a dang second. And also, just like, yeah, Sherman and Penny are getting on each other's nerves and they start liking each other. And it's a little too fast. Now, I get it, like, they're kids. It happens. Like, it's almost believable, but it's also just, oh, like, if it's like, by the end of the adventure, like, by the time they go, like, flying on the Da Vinci Mobile, I can kind of buy that. But when they're still in Egypt, and it's like, if I didn't know better, Sherman, I'd say you were jealous of her and King Tut. Like, why should he be? I don't buy this movie. Strike 3. So I don't think it's funny. I think it's unfunny. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy how mean-spirited your antagonists were. Like, they weren't fun. Like, this is DreamWorks. Hail Galaxar. Like, that dude's funny. I actually really like that. You have Lord Farquaad. You've got Charming. I don't see the Godmother as being a super funny character, but she's I like the Godmother a lot. And then you got, like, Rumpelstiltskin. Nobody's smart but me. Like, he's really funny. You can do that in these movies. And then, like, fucking Jack Horner from Puss in Boots 2. He's awful, but he's so funny. They're just not funny in this movie. And then even our main characters, like, he's fine, but I don't really like him, and Sherman's okay. I just hated watching it, and I didn't want to finish it. We did. But not every movie will appeal to everyone. Very clearly. I'm sorry. Just the way I kind of did that thing with my head felt so condescending, and I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to be, but it's like, look, I am sure there's a lot of people who like this movie. And you know what? If you love pun humor, you're probably going to really like the humor in this movie. If you like history, and like especially like some of these eras, you might really enjoy some of the shit that happens here, like when they go to ancient Egypt, like the shit with Da Vinci. I thought that was probably my favorite part of the movie, its favorite aspect, but it wasn't something that super grabbed me. I just didn't like it. But if you did, I'm sincerely glad you did. I'm glad you found a movie that you watch, you're like, this is good. I like this. If it's something that you love, I'm glad you've got something that you love. And even though I didn't like it, don't let that change your opinion at all. And I'll kind of say that the other way. Like, hey, if you love it and you want to say, like, this is why I liked it, this is why I disagree with you, that's completely fine. And maybe I'll find something more appreciated about it, but it's probably not going to change my opinion. But hey, as long as we can be civil about the things we like and the things we dislike, I think it's fine. Just, unfortunately for me, this movie was not fine.